Ottawa has been looking to invest in building more homes that are ecologically friendly and also to create more Indigenous partnerships in the housing area. One BC company is combining those needs to repurpose homes that were set for demolition and taking them to Indigenous communities in need of housing. We are joined by the CEO of Renewal Development, Glyn Lewis. Glyn, thanks very much indeed for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Andrew.
Tell us what you're doing to help remedy the acute shortage of housing in Indigenous communities.
That's a great question. So we know that there's a critical shortage of housing all across Canada, but that's particularly acute in rural, remote First Nation communities. And if you go up and down the coast of British Columbia, there's hundreds of remote, rural, small Indigenous communities that need good, affordable, climate-resilient housing. And on the flip side, the real estate industry here in Metro Vancouver and in Greater Victoria is tearing down thousands of homes, single-family homes, to make space for higher density development. So we know that there's an incredible supply of good homes being torn down across the region, but we also know that there's an incredible need for good housing in some of these remote First Nation communities. And our work as a company, Renewal Development, is to bridge those two opportunities and needs.
I mean, that's the thing that used to happen in rural Canada a century ago. I think people would move houses rather than rebuild. But tell us, in the modern age, what's involved technically in picking up a house and moving it?
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly a lot of engineering, a lot of planning, and there is some complexity to what we do. We have to find and assess all of these homes that are slated for demolition, and we assess them for their condition and their quality. But we also have to assess to make sure that we can physically move them. We're picking up buildings that are 30, 40 feet wide and 50, 60 feet long and trying to move them through our urban streets. And eventually we mostly move these homes by barges. So it is a lot of planning, it's a lot of engineering. It is an industry that's been around for hundreds of years. There's great stories of companies starting in the Midwest in the 1850s, 1860s. They used to move these things by horse and carriage, and now we use hydraulics and barges. And so the industry has gotten more sophisticated, but I've seen an opportunity to scale and to replicate what I think is a really innovative, sustainable housing model.
So what's involved? How do you pick up a house? Do you put some kind of a platform under it, or can you give us a rough idea?
Yeah, so the process we start with, once we've assessed the home and it's a good condition home, it's valuable and it can be moved, we add steel beams below the floor joists, and then you build a cribbing, and then you use these unified jacks, a unified jacking system, and the jacks push on the beams push on the floor joists, and that's how you physically lift the home. Once it's up in the air and the beams are underneath the home, we attach dollies, and then the dollies attach to a truck, and then the home leaves the origin site and goes down the street and eventually down to a barge, where we often move it to more rural, non-urban communities that need housing.
How do you move it through the streets? I mean, I think you said 30 feet wide.
Yeah, about 30, 35 feet wide is usually the typical width of a home we move. I guess the short answer to that question, Andrew, is we move them carefully. You have to do a lot of measurements, you have to do a lot of planning, a lot of engineering, talking to local municipalities and the Department of Transportation. But like I said, this has happened for hundreds of years, and in fact, Auckland, New Zealand is the global leaders in this. Every year in Auckland, New Zealand, 1,500 single-family homes are moved out of Auckland to the surrounding areas. And so we know that there's global leadership that demonstrate that this is a viable, innovative, sustainable housing model. And I'm really excited for our company, Renewal Development, to replicate and scale this model here in the Pacific Northwest.
I remember that scene in the shipping news, the Newfoundland movie, where they're rockers, they're pirates who loot ships that come abroad and they get driven out. They have to push their house across a frozen lake. Do you make money at this? Is it a profit-seeking operation?
That's such a great question. So we are a for-profit company. I do try to maximize triple bottom line and looking at sustainability, looking at the social impact, looking at reconciliation with Indigenous communities. A lot of these projects, Andrew, they wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for the leadership and the partnership with a lot of these coastal indigenous communities. So we provide a service to real estate companies, and our service is to clear their sites. So essentially, we act as a demolition company for real estate developers here in Metro Vancouver and Greater Victoria. So once we secure the good homes that we want out of these sites that we clear, we provide a product to an indigenous community or any community that needs housing up and down the coast. And so in that sense, we're essentially an innovative, sustainable, modular company that provides good housing to communities in need.
Just to be devil's advocate, would it not be simpler to just go with regular prefab homes or simply to build the home in situ?
Yeah, that's a great question. So in some of these communities, especially in some of these remote communities, there are no trades, there's no supplies or local products. We're dealing with some really remote communities where there's sometimes not even a coffee shop, Andrew. So to construct housing in a situation in a community like that is incredibly complicated, but it's also incredibly costly. So bringing in a good retrofitted, repurposed home is much more cost effective. We estimate it's about 20 to 40% more cost effective than building new housing in some of these remote communities, or to bring in other modular or prefab housing solutions.
It's interesting, yeah, fascinating that they're just ripping down these homes. I guess extra density is good, but it does seem like a waste. That's a great story, Glyn. I love that footage of the houses going on the barge. Thanks very much indeed.
Thanks for having me.
Glyn Lewis, CEO of Renewal Development.